Hello. Today I thought we might talk a bit on this Peace podcast about the economy and money. Do you think that's a good idea, Belinda?
I think it is.
I know it's a concern for a lot of people, but our first task, I suppose, is to show how, from the base that we've already established, the relationship between work and creativity, how that relates to the economy and our understanding of money. Now, what is economy? Economy comes from a Greek word, oikonomia, which means the rules of the household. And these rules pertain to the management of resources. So there's an economy that we have at a private level. We have to be able to run a household. We have to be able to balance a budget. We have to see to it that enough comes in to cover outgoings. And as far as possible, everybody living within that household has to contribute to the well-being of that household. Then we can scale up economia as far as we want to go, right through to the globe. But intermediate, of course, is the national economy, and there has to be a give and take there. There has to be proper management of resources. There has to be a balanced budget. That's not happening in the world today. Most countries have a blown out budget, and the world seems to be drowning in debt. And that's another thing to understand. How is it that all the countries, including all the developed countries, are drowning in debt? Who are they in debt to? And is this situation sustainable? And how did it come about? We need to, over the next few weeks, look at issues of sustainability as they apply to economy and ecology and the environment. What is the purest form of economy? Well, I'm going to suggest that it is a spontaneous economy of giving, called the gift economy. There are three different economies that I want to touch on: the gift economy, the command economy, and the exchange economy, which is also known as the market economy. And in the process, the four major areas of economy will become obvious. What are these four major areas? They apply, these are basic principles that we can think in terms of profitably, I think, because we don't want to lose sight of the wood for the trees. We need some basic principles. And when it comes to the science of economy, we need to think in terms of production. How are things produced, goods and services? We need to think in terms of distribution, exchange and consumption. These are four areas. Now, in what I'm going to call primitive economies, we have production going straight to distribution and consumption. So there are 3 stages. But in the market economy that we're familiar with, exchange is interposed between production and distribution. We understand production as, well, the production that comes from work, which we have already explained as bearing a relationship to creativity and our goal-orientated behaviour. I'm talking in terms of the ideal here, because this is what we have to measure ourselves up against. Things get produced one way or another, and this applies both to manufactured goods, but it also applies to the services that human beings offer one another. Now, in a gift economy, a person has ownership of their work, and they decide spontaneously to make a gift of their work to somebody else or to some group of people. I may grow a crop of vegetables, let's say, and then I offer them to somebody else. Or I might do some work on somebody's property, or help out with tutoring. And if I ask nothing in return, it can be considered a gift. And the gift is the most natural way of relating economically amongst familiars. Well, what do I mean by that? When you consider the people in your economic community to be either family or like family, they are familiars. And when we grow up in a household, we get used to simply contributing. A baby needs to be minded, somebody does the job. A meal needs to be cooked, somebody does the job. Bills need to be paid, or some task needs to be done, and whoever is ready, willing, able, available to do it steps up to the plate and does it. Now, in that scenario, it is natural, unless there is some disturbance or derangement of relationships at another level, it is natural for the other people in that situation to feel a sense of gratitude. And they haven't been asked to do anything in return, but it is natural to feel a sense of gratitude. And perhaps along with that sense of gratitude comes a bit of a sense of beholdenness. Now, that beholdenness is not demanded. It hasn't resulted from saying, I'm going to do X and I expect you to do Y. It may be unspoken, but in the ideal situation, things are done freely, and one trusts that everything will work out, that people will pull their own weight, that people will make the contributions that they can make, and they won't hold unrealistic and unfair judgments of each other. So if there is a sense of beholdenness, like my son or daughter has done a lot for me, or my relative, or somebody within my intimate community, they mightn't be blood family, but I'm saying that wherever people treat each other like family, there is a sense of familiarity. The people aren't strangers to each other. They believe that their destinies are intertwined, and they have a duty of care towards one another. So any sense of beholdenness has the quality of an honourable obligation.
And it's unspoken.
It is unspoken
That's right.
and it is undemanded, but there is trust. There is trust that you're able to do that. At some point down the track, I will gladly, I will willingly, I will gratefully do what I can to help you.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying here, that is a perfectly good economy. And in a sense, it's the purest of all economies. And it puts a premium on human freedom. It values freedom, that is to say, spontaneous giving above everything else. In that kind of economy, there's no market where exchange happens. Remember, I said that the market economy is the exchange economy. They're synonyms. With a market simply is a place where buyers and sellers come together and strike a deal. But it involves pricing goods and services. And it involves the quid pro quo principle. I give you X and you give me Y in return. Markets may be big and small. They may be village markets in town squares, or they may be abstracted global markets online. But at this stage, no market is involved in the gift economy. So that big division of economic science that we call exchange does not apply. We go from production straight to distribution and then consumption by the person who receives the end benefit. What determines how goods get distributed? Well, it is simply the choice, the spontaneous choice and giving of the producer. You make something and you choose to give it to me, or you choose to give it to him or to her, and that will govern distribution. Distribution is the result of individual choices amongst familiars in this ideal gift economy. Now there's a second type of economy that also cuts out exchange in the market, and that is what we might call the command economy. And most people associate that term command economy with communist countries, communist systems. The idea is that there is some governmental authority that decides what is to be produced, how it's to be produced, how much is to be produced, and how it's to be distributed. So it's actually going to dictate production, distribution, and consumption. And we can see in the history of communist regimes an attempt to implement this ideal to some degree or other. You don't decide what you're going to make or what you're going to create. You can't follow your spontaneous impulse. Nor can you decide how much to make, nor can you decide who will be the beneficiary or recipient of the production. Now, this kind of economy sets a premium on security. Notionally, this is meant to be its strength. We know its failings in practice. But notionally, the idea is that people, in a sense, surrender their freedom in return for security, because Big Brother, or whatever the authority in charge, plans this economy right down to the last details in order that everybody will be provided for. Mm-hmm. So everybody will have the basic housing and they will have the basic supplies.
Sorry, it doesn't happen, unfortunately.
It doesn't happen as planned.
Yeah.
But we can see what the thinking behind it is.
We know what the thinking is,
Mm-hmm.
but there's too many homeless people. Too many people aren't getting their needs met, their basic needs met.
Yes, so even in the economies that are meant to be planned to a greater or lesser degree, meant to be socialistic or run for the common good, have many failings, and one of which is the stifling of human initiative.
That's right.
From a purely justice perspective, people have many different attributes and abilities and inclinations, and if some people are willing to take initiative and do things, there is a value there in having a situation that facilitates that enables that to happen, so that they can take economic initiative, they can run their own enterprises, and they can engage with others more or less on their own terms. Most of the economies in the world have a mixture of private and public aspects. They have a mixture of initiative, freedom, and security, or public provision of the basic things that are required in life. Where does this notion of the totally provident authority come from? Ultimately, perhaps it's a religious idea that God provides, or the universe provides, that there is some benevolent power in the universe that knows your needs and can deliver those needs, what you need to live your life, to flourish, and to fulfill your mission on earth. Mightn't respect your wants as much, but certainly knows your needs and provides for those needs. It's a comforting thought. But whenever human beings have taken power and set up a state to usurp the place of that benevolent power, things have gone awry. In fact, things have gone disastrously wrong. So these are two ideals of economy that eliminate that middle division of exchange. On the one hand, we have the gift economy, which puts a premium on freedom. On the other hand, we have the command economy, the totally planned economy, planned for the people by the rulers of the people. And that puts a premium notionally on security, so that nobody goes wanting, so that everybody is looked after.
Isn't that the ideal though? Doesn't really exist.
These are just ideals, and in the real world, where there are real economies, these don't exist in the way that they have been conceptualized.
Yeah.
But the ideals, I think, are still inspiring economies, and the mixture of ideals is inspiring economies. That's why we talk about mixed economies that have a degree of private and public involvement. Private ownership, public ownership, alliances between the private sector and the public sector. Now, finally we come to the economy that we're mostly familiar with. And again, I'm going to delineate it in terms of the ideal. This economy is one that involves exchange. We can call it the market economy because exchange happens in and through a market. A market is just a place, as I say, where buyers and sellers can come together and match up what they have. It may be a physical locality. It may be a locality in cyberspace. A market can be made over the phone. A market can be made online. A market can be made in the shopping mall. When somebody has something to sell and somebody demands that product or service and is willing to exchange something for the product or service, we call that a market. Now, the exchange economy, market economy, can be of two kinds: unmediated or mediated. What do I mean by that? If we go back in history, before there was money, there was barter.
Bartering, exactly.
Right? So I'm introducing bartering here as an unmediated form of exchange, and I want to distinguish it from a money market economy where money is the medium of exchange. Let's just posit a simplistic bartering scenario. Let's say we lived long ago and money hadn't developed as a medium of exchange. So I might have a field of potatoes and I harvest them, I have a surplus, and I bring them to you and I exchange them for some eggs and milk, which you've made on your farm. Now, there is exchange involved. It's not like a gift or a command economy. Mm-hmm. Because there's an expectation that I'll give you something and you'll give me something in return which has an equivalent value. Bartering took place on a larger scale in the past, pre-monetary times, but it still takes place today. I may cook and deliver you a meal, and in return you may do a stint of babysitting for me. There's no exchange of cash, no promissory notes written, but nevertheless there's an exchange of value.
You probably end up with the same result anyway.
Yes, and where money is short or hasn't been created, human beings have still found ways of conducting economics in a fair way where value is exchanged for value.
In a fair way.
Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes it's, as you can well imagine, it's not convenient for barter to take place. Sometimes it's difficult to divide up the thing that you want to barter. And sometimes you may exchange something and it may spoil in your shed, in your barn, in your warehouse. you may need to be able to store the value that you've received so that you can use that value somewhere down the track. We have gift vouchers today. People give them out at birthdays and whatnot. And that gift value, say a gift card for Myers or David Jones or whatever, that's a store of value. You don't have to immediately consume anything. Well, let's face it, I mean, unless you ate potatoes within a certain period of time, they were going to spoil on you. Any food stuff is going to spoil on you. But with a gift card, you can keep it in your pocket for months, maybe sometimes years, and then you can go and redeem it. So it becomes a store of value. So one of the attractions of having a medium of exchange is the store of value aspect. I don't have to use it immediately. It's there, it's value in my possession. But at some point down the track, I can redeem that value and use it to buy goods and services that I can consume for the furtherance of my life, for my enjoyment, satisfaction, and so on. As soon as we get a medium of exchange, we're entering into the mediated exchange economy. Money. Now, the first step in money, I would say, is commodity money. Many things have been used as money in the past. Solid physical items. People have used shells. People have used tobacco, cigarettes, as a form of money or currency, especially in time of war. People use precious metals, like gold and silver. Now, it's the commodity of precious metals that seems to that's made the biggest impact in economic history as a medium of exchange. Silver, and in particular gold. These metals are valued for their intrinsic value, their appeal, their beauty, their durability. They're not perishable, and they can be divided up, and most people value them. So initially people would, use metals, and then they mint coins in those metals. The whole point of that was to guarantee that this coin guarantees that you're receiving a certain weight of the metal. Otherwise, how could it serve as a medium of exchange? You don't know whether you're being shortchanged or not. Do you want to exchange, a certain amount of crop, or a certain number of animals, or a machine? And we come more into modern times, forms of technology, and you want to know that the amount of gold or silver you're receiving is the right amount of gold or silver. So the sovereign of the land, and that's how we get the idea of a sovereign coin as well, the sovereign, the king, the authority guarantees that this has a certain weight of the metal. And we can take that store of value and use it to buy other things. We don't have to immediately exchange something of our production. Well, we are exchanging some value, but whether we're taking the payment in money and keeping that money to be used on something else that we want to consume at another time.
Or you can invest it.
Yes, but that investment presupposes like a modern banking system, and that's relatively recent in economic history. And the banks developed because not everybody is using their money all the time. Sometimes you're just parking your money, and goldsmiths, who were the forerunners of bankers, they could mine your gold, but they found that while they were mining your gold, there are other people who could put that gold to work to develop their own businesses in life. And you wouldn't make a claim on your gold, so they decided that they could lend it out.
That's what banks do.
Mm-hmm. And from there, it develops into what's called fractional reserve banking, and they realised that they could lend out a lot more than they had on hand, as long as people didn't come for their money all at the same time. And that's how banks ended up participating in the generation of money, which is another story. And it has led to a lot of problems in the modern economy. But getting back to the nature of money, we've started by talking about commodity money, shells, tobacco, gold, silver. It could be anything that a community agrees upon as money, as a medium of exchange. If I live in a community of 100 people and we all agree that a particular type of rock can serve as money, then that's money. It can be used to buy goods and services. Why? Because all of us in this economic community agree upon it. If some of us didn't, so that's just a bunch of rocks, that's of no value at all, then it wouldn't work. So there's this consensus aspect to a medium of exchange. So from commodity money, we get to symbolic money. Money as notes and coins, currency. Why do I call it symbolic money? Because originally, banknotes and coins were all backed by a precious metal, by gold.
Gold standard.
The gold standard, yes. What was the gold standard? It meant that if you were going to, for convenience sake, issue banknotes and coins, then they represented gold that was held in deposit in banks. And you could, at any point, you could take your notes and have it redeemed for hard gold, which was the true value.
Gold bullions.
Gold bullion, gold coin, yeah, any form that gold is stored in. But
that's what I would like to collect. Gold bullions instead of notes.
So, for most of the 20th century, every country was on a gold standard. That all the money in the world had a gold backing. But this changed in 1971 under President Nixon in the US. It was a critical moment in monetary history where he broke the link of convertibility between currency and gold. Governments needed to get their hands on a lot of money, and it's very limiting and frustrating to have the amount of money in circulation, the amount of currency in circulation. It's called currency because it runs like, it flows like a river. It does the rounds, it's currency. It can get frustrating if governments want to wage war and do things. It's usually war. It's usually to make mischief. We might just turn that. Apologies for the sound. So we'll put that on silent. So let's say a government really needs to get its hands on a lot of currency to pay soldiers or munitions manufacturers because it's got big militaristic ambitions. In 1971, you still had the Vietnam War. Governments always seem to get into trouble at times of war. They need to get their hands on a lot of money to pay for the military operation. So eventually, it was just a matter of time before they thought, well, it's too constraining to limit the amount of money in circulation to the amount of gold that we hold in Fort Knox or in the bank vaults or wherever. Because you can't just materialise gold like that. It's in the ground. It has to be mined. It takes time and energy to do that. And it's a scarce resource. But we have unlimited desires and unlimited ambitions. Therefore, we'll break the link between the precious metal and the symbolic currency. And from then on, money becomes what's known as fiat currency. And fiat is a Latin word which means let it be. Fiat lux, let there be light. In this case, let there be money. So the government can just print as much money as it wants for its purposes.
Shame it's only the government that can do that.
Well, if you try to print money in a garage operation, you'd be criminalised as a counterfeiter.
Absolutely.
You'd be a counterfeiter. But the government is allowed to do that. And in our next instalment, we'll take it up from there, from the point of fiat money.